My name is Eli Brennan, Park Ranger, Search and Rescue Specialist, stationed out of Bitterroot Valley, Montana, 19 years in, and every year I tell myself I've seen the worst that the wild can throw at a person. You train for the cold. You prepare for the altitude. You learn how to read the wind, how to listen to trees long before they snap under snow load. You understand that sometimes people go missing because nature doesn't give second chances. Because they didn't plan, or they got too confident, or they wandered too far off trail when the sun was already going down. But this case didn't start that way. October 9th, 2013. The alert came in from the girlfriend of a man named Taylor Griggs, 35 years old, solo hiker, ex-military, ultra-marathon runner. This wasn't someone new to the woods. He'd done the loop through the Sapphires before, twice, both times without issue. 3 days in, 3 days out. He was supposed to check in at a small turnout near Skalkaho Pass. He never showed. We dispatched a 2-person unit by dusk. No panic. It was early fall, temperatures were holding in the mid-40s at night, and he was experienced. Honestly, we thought we'd reach his camp by midnight, maybe walk him back out by morning. But when the team located his last known waypoint, that assumption evaporated. They found the tent just off trail, about 200 yards into a clearing that was mostly pine scrub and frost-hardened earth. The tent flap was closed, zipped shut from the inside. No signs of a struggle. The area around it was undisturbed. No drag marks, no prints, no obvious tracks in or out. Inside was a rolled-up sleeping bag, dry. A metal thermos, half full of coffee that was still faintly warm. 1 pair of hiking boots, a flashlight. And that was it. No phone, no ID, no wallet, no trail map, no journal. We searched a 12-mile radius that night. Nothing. Next morning, we called in the rest of the SAR team. Dogs, drones, choppers. We canvassed by land, air, and thermal until every grid was walked, flown, and scanned. On the 3rd day, the dogs stopped reacting. One of them sat down near a creek bed, stared uphill into the trees, and wouldn't move. I remember the handler saying it like this: "She's not tracking. She's waiting." We kept expanding the perimeter, 5 miles, then 10. I walked terrain out there that I'd hiked dozens of times before, and yet somehow it felt wrong. Quiet in the way the air gets before lightning, still but alert. Then came the 5th night. The team was regrouping near a ranger outpost about 7 miles from the last location. We were reviewing drone footage, coordinating heat maps, and logging what little data we had. I was in the northern perimeter station alone on comms when a voice broke through the radio feed. A faint voice, low, muted by static. "Unit 3, are you hearing this?" I paused, pressed the receiver. "Copy that, base." "Say again?" Silence. Then it came again, but different this time. Another voice, male, older, detached. "Yeah, but he's been dead for years." Then the line went dead. No signal, no repeat transmission, nothing in the logs. At first, we thought it was a glitch. Old audio from another channel bleeding through. Except, we don't archive comms like that. Not in the portable units. And we definitely don't store old SAR transmissions from over a decade ago in field radios. And here's the part that still keeps me up at night. Taylor Griggs's father, Vietnam vet, passed away in 2003, had the exact same voice as the man on the radio. I know this because his girlfriend sent us an old voicemail to help confirm identity early in the search. It was part of his emergency contact form. That message was meant to play in case of a confirmed fatality, but no body was ever found. Nothing. We found a tree, half a mile north of the original campsite, where the bark had been scraped away. Not by an animal, by something that left narrow, tool-like marks, almost methodical, vertical. 8 of them, parallel, like tallies. The case was suspended on October 23rd. Status: missing, presumed dead, no remains recovered. But there's a space in our system for unresolveds, the ones that hang around the dispatch room like smoke no one can clear out. Taylor's file is in there, under a locked tag. Only 6 people can open it. I'm one of them, and I don't go near it anymore. His family still comes every year. First week of October. They light a candle. One of those little LED ones you can leave in the dirt, right beneath the wooden trail marker where he was last seen. It always stays lit for about 3 nights before something, wind, wildlife, whatever, tips it over and buries it in pine needles. No ranger talks about it anymore. Not officially. And the people who were on that search team, they don't work in the Park Service now. 3 of them quit within a year. 1 moved to Arizona, another joined the Forest Service overseas. The last one, he won't return my calls. So now, I'm the only one left at Bitterroot who was actually there. The only one still on the job. The only one who still hears his voice crackle through the radio every so often, just faint enough to question whether I imagined it. But I didn't. Rescue stories that never ended. Because they're still missing. Every year, across the wilderness of North America, thousands of search and rescue calls are logged. Most end with answers, some with tragedy, but a small number, just enough to raise eyebrows and whispers, leave behind no trace at all. No gear, no bodies, no good explanation. This series explores those cases, the ones they don't mention in press releases, the ones that show up in briefings with words crossed out, the ones where even the most seasoned rangers left the woods quieter than they entered. MindFuel presents first-hand accounts, recovered audio, and detail leaks that were never meant for public review. These are the stories that stayed open long after the gear was packed up, because the people they were trying to save were never found. Subscribe now to MindFuel, because what's still out there, whatever took them, has never stopped watching. Each year, over 600,000 people enter federally protected forests and wilderness areas across the United States. Most of them come back, but some don't. Their names are logged into national databases. Their faces go up on laminated flyers pinned to trailheads and ranger stations. Search grids are formed, helicopters circle, dogs are brought in, for days, sometimes weeks. Then the reports start thinning out. Updates become fewer. The media cycle dies off, and somewhere, behind the curtains of protocol, those names are slowly retired from the system. A line is drawn, a status is entered, closed, unresolved, presumed fatal. But what happens when even the people who went looking can't explain what they saw out there? MindFuel has interviewed 5 current and former search and rescue personnel, rangers, volunteers, pilots, who worked on cases that never made it to the evening news. They are not speaking out for attention. They are speaking out because they still don't sleep through the night. Let's begin. Ranger 1, Sergeant Tyler McGrath, Northern Idaho, 2006. We were looking for a missing teenage girl. She went off trail during a summer group hike outside of Priest Lake. First 2 days were textbook, grid search, tracking dogs, air support. But on day 3, a chopper team called in a sighting, what they thought was her, walking in a burn scar area 6 miles north. I was part of the team dispatched to intercept her. Except when we got there weren't any prints, no drag marks, no evidence that anyone had walked through. Nothing but ash, clean, undisturbed ash. And the crew in the chopper, they swore she turned and looked up at them when they passed overhead. But the infrared scan didn't detect a body, just an absence, like a hole. We spent 7 more days in that zone, found her shoe, still tied, upright in the middle of a dead clearing. That's all we ever found. SAR volunteer, Dana Reese. Southern Appalachians, 2018. We were about 2 days into a missing hiker op out near Blood Mountain. He'd gone alone, according to a note left in his car. Was planning to photograph the sunrise from the peak. Never checked back in. We hiked up, expecting the worst. Maybe a fall, exposure. But once we hit the eastern ridgeline, the radios started glitching. Not just static, but voices, like conversations being replayed, old ones. One of them said my name, first and last. No one else on my team even knew how to pronounce it right. I never went back up that ridge. I filed for reassignment after the case was pulled. He was never located. Ranger Doe's, Miguel Ortega, Organ Mountains, New Mexico, 2009. 2 brothers went missing hiking the Needle. One of the rangers found a trail camera along their planned route. It wasn't one of ours. We reviewed the SD card. Last image was time-stamped 1:43 a.m., pitch black. 2 figures walking uphill, a third behind them unlit. No pack. Arms too long. Eye shine, like an animal, but it was upright. We forwarded the photo to the state police, never got it back. Official record says the brothers died in a fall. No bodies ever recovered. SAR. Helicopter pilot, Claire Rowley, Washington State, 2012. I ran flight support for Olympic National Park, missing camper 3 miles east of Lake Crescent. We got called in to scan the Alpine Basin. Everything was smooth until we passed over the tree line. That's when every single instrument on the bird flatlined. Altimeter, radar, even the backup compass. No magnetic interference alert. Nothing. We were blind. I had to take us back down by sight alone. Here's what you won't find in the incident report. Right before the blackout, my co-pilot said he saw something in the trees, like a flash of white, in the shape of a man, just too tall. Wrong proportions. We both saw it on the way back down, and it wasn't standing still. Retired SAR commander, Wallace Walt Trenholm, Alaska Interior, 1995. It was my last mission. I was 30 years in. A small bush plane went off radar coming into the Wrangles. Weather was bad, but manageable. We found the wreckage, mostly intact. What we didn't find was the pilot, or the single passenger. No blood, no footprints, just the seatbelts cut clean, like with shears. And outside the fuselage, symbols, dozens of them, scratched into the snow with what looked like bone. When I asked the investigation team about it later, they said there were no signs of human presence around the crash site. I have photos, took them before the feds arrived. They never asked me for them, but I don't need proof. I was there. I felt what was watching us. It didn't want us to find anything. Each of these professionals carried their cases home. Some still hear the radio clicks. Some still wake up expecting the phone to ring. But none of them forget, and none of their cases are officially solved. These are not ghost stories. They are field logs, and they're not asking you to believe. They're asking you to listen. Subscribe to MindFuel. Because these stories are still happening, and the next one may already be unfolding. We got the call at 7:42 p.m., August 3rd, 2020. Solo hiker, Evan Holbrook, 28 years old, from Eugene. He'd parked his car near a gated logging road on the west side of Willamette, about 3 miles off Forest Route 21. Left a voicemail for his roommate saying he was heading up to scout old fire-damaged trails. Supposed to be back by sundown. He never made it. First light. The next morning, we began the search. Myself and 4 others swept the immediate perimeter around the vehicle. Standard 10-meter spacing, radios open. About 1.5 miles in, we picked up a trail. Not the man-made kind. A track, bare footprints. Now here's where it gets strange. It wasn't a pair. Just the right foot. Bare. No tread pattern. No left foot beside it. It looked fresh. The soil was soft, slightly damp from a morning fog. The prints were deep with clear toe splay, as if whoever was walking was doing so slowly, deliberately. The spacing was wide, almost too wide to be from someone walking normally on one leg. At first, we thought maybe it was a prank. You get that sometimes, folks trying to mess with us, plant weird stuff out there. But this went on for over 6 miles, through brush, through shallow creek beds, over 2 steep ridge lines, never breaking stride, just that one foot, always forward. No drag marks, no sign of hopping, no sign of crutches, just movement. It's hard to explain how wrong it felt. You know how you can walk through the forest and feel like the air is still around you? Like the trees are just watching, not reacting? This trail didn't feel like that. It felt like the trees had moved aside for it, like whatever was walking didn't have to push through branches, as if the woods had already parted to let it pass. Evan. This is Evan Holbrook. I'm on trail, I think. There's a whispering. I can't tell how far. It sounds like my mom. She's calling my name. Dispatcher. Evan, we've got your signal. Stay where you are. What direction are the voices coming from? It's her. I swear to God it's her. But she's been dead since I was 12. Ranger Keith Lawson continued. We scrambled his location from the last ping, somewhere near the Burnt Ridge switchback. By the time we got there was no sign of him. No camp, no pack, no radio. But about 15 feet off trail, the footprints started again. Still just the right foot, leading deeper into a basin that wasn't even marked on our topographic maps. It was dense, like the underbrush had been growing inward instead of outward, choking itself. I've never seen anything like it. We followed the trail until we hit a slope of shattered shale. The prints ended at the edge, a sudden stop, not near a drop-off. Just a stop. No disturbance in the rock, no skid, nothing beyond. It was as if whatever had been walking had just ceased. We grid searched that area for 72 hours. No wildlife trails, no scent for the dogs to track. We even brought in heat sensors. They turned up exactly one signature, one of our own team members. The forest around us was cold, still. When we reviewed the audio logs later, there was something else. Something none of us heard in real time. Just under Evan's voice. Faint, but clear once you knew what to listen for. A second voice. It didn't speak, it just repeated. A whisper, same word, over and over. Home, home, home. Narrator. Documentary tone, slow and clear. Evan Holbrook's case remains unsolved. No evidence of wildlife attack. No personal belongings recovered. His cell phone was never found. His voice was never heard again. But his parents confirmed something chilling. The phrase, "It's her. She's calling my name." It matched exactly, word for word, what Evan had once said to a therapist as a child after his mother passed away unexpectedly from a brain aneurysm. He claimed he used to hear her voice calling to him from the woods behind their home. That therapist died in 2015. The only person who knew that quote was Evan. This is just the beginning. One missing person. One set of impossible tracks. One voice that shouldn't have been there. And this isn't the only case. Up next, another ranger's report from the Utah Canyonlands, where a child missing for 11 hours came back, whispering in a language no one could identify. And he said something no one expected. It said we're not supposed to remember, but sometimes it forgets to make us forget. Subscribe to MindFuel and stay close, because the farther in we go, the less we can explain. August 14th, 2017. Bitterroot National Forest, Montana. A scout troop, Pack 328, was camping just outside the western edge of the Sapphire Divide, not far from Trapper Peak. 11 boys, 3 adult supervisors, clear skies, night temps in the mid-50s. The plan was simple: a 3-day weekend to teach the basics: firecraft, orienteering, backcountry safety. They arrived Friday afternoon. By dawn Saturday, one of the boys was gone. SAR officer Jolene Marks, Bitterroot District, field interview. His name was Jacob Heller. 10 years old, quiet kid, loved birds, kept a little notebook where he drew nests and feathers. His tent mate woke up around 5:30 that morning and said Jacob was already gone. His boots were missing, but his jacket and compass were still inside the tent. We assumed he'd stepped out to use the bathroom, but as the minutes ticked by, it became obvious he wasn't just nearby. And the forest at that hour was still. Way too still. Narrator. The search began within an hour. Camp was locked down, the troop was held in place. The adults joined forest rangers to start the initial sweep. Dogs were brought in from Ravalli County. Jacob's scent was picked up quickly, but what baffled the team was where it led. 300 yards west of camp, it stopped, at the base of a massive old-growth pine tree, 90 feet tall. No branches within the first 25 feet, trunk too wide to climb without equipment. And yet, the dog sat at its base and refused to move, just stared up. At first, the team saw nothing in the canopy, but drone footage, run for thermal imaging around 3 p.m., picked up 2 heat anomalies just beneath the top layer of needles. When they repositioned the drone and zoomed in, there, nearly 90 feet off the ground, were Jacob's shoes, tied together by the laces, hung gently over a branch, his jacket folded neatly beside them, balanced, no snags, no tearing, just placed. SAR officer Jolene Marks. There was no way he got up there himself. None. Even our climbing techs said the angle was wrong for any known technique. No human fingers could have gripped bark like that. Not without leaving traces. There weren't any. Not on the bark, not on the needles, not even a single broken limb. Like someone or something had just brought him up there, set his things down, and vanished. The tree was in frame, 3 minutes before the drone would later detect the jacket. The camera had been motion-triggered. It captured nothing. No movement, no animal, no child, just a single frame of the pine tree in the dark, unmoving, quiet. Search efforts expanded for over a week. Rangers, deputies, volunteers. They combed over 9 square miles. Divers swept nearby creeks and ponds. Helicopters hovered for days. No body, no prints, no trace, except for one final object found on day 8. Jacob's compass. It was discovered half buried in loose soil about half a mile southeast of the tree, just beneath the surface, as if someone had planted it. The lens was cracked, the frame scuffed, but it was still working. The needle spun once, then locked onto north, except the direction it pointed, according to GPS, was due south. Jacob Heller remains missing. There were no ransom notes, no witnesses, no known predators in the area that could have pulled a child vertically without signs of struggle. No natural explanation. The pine tree was cut down 2 years later after a lightning strike. Inside the hollowed core, just beneath the upper crown, rangers discovered something else. Narrow scratches, dozens of them, inside the tree, as if small fingernails had dragged in tight vertical patterns from the top, downward. No animal on record claws inward. Jacob's drawings were left behind in his scout pack. One of the pages was a sketch of a bird he'd labeled as not real. Long body, no wings, just dark eyes and lines like branches reaching from its back. Perched in a tree, watching something below. The date on that drawing? August 12th, the day before he vanished. There are things in the forest that move without footprints, things that climb without limbs, that leave behind objects, not as clues, but as echoes. This is not an isolated case. And in the next file, another child reappears after going missing for just 11 hours, but comes back whispering in a language no one could recognize, with a message he wasn't supposed to remember. Subscribe to MindFuel to keep following the unfiled cases, because in some forests, going missing might not be an accident. Monongahela National Forest, West Virginia, October 18, 2014. 3 college students, Leah Brandt, Marcus Lindley, and Jordan Weaver, never returned from a weekend camping trip deep in the cranberry wilderness. They had borrowed gear from the university's outdoor program, borrowed a Jeep Wrangler from Jordan's cousin. They left behind no enemies, no debts, and according to their online messages and texts, they weren't running from anything. They just wanted one last adventure before winter. They got one. SAR Captain Hank Toller, Monongahela District. We got the alert from the family Monday morning. They were supposed to check in Sunday. Forecast said light rain overnight, but nothing bad. Temps were dropping though, down into the mid-30s. Still, we figured a breakdown or they maybe lost GPS signal. Happens more often than you'd think in that part of the forest. We found the Jeep about 6 miles down an access road that hadn't seen a tire track in months. No damage, keys still inside. Tents were set up about a 1/4 mile into the trees. You could see the smoke ring where the fire had burned down. Narrator. The fire pit still radiated faint heat. A coffee mug sat half full beside a folding chair. The tent was zipped from the inside. Inside the tent were 2 sleeping bags, unzipped, undisturbed. A third was outside, laid out like someone had been watching the stars. A jacket hung on a nearby tree limb. Their phones, wallets, and 1 camera were in a gear bag at the foot of the tent. Nothing was missing. No food disturbed, no torn fabric, no drag marks, no blood, no animal tracks. Just absence. SAR Captain Toller. It didn't feel like they got scared and ran. Nothing was knocked over, no panic. It was like they just stood up and left, without shoes, without their gear, like someone whispered to them and they obeyed. Timestamp, 2:39 a.m. File, vox092.wav. At first, faint static. Then silence. Then sound. A voice. Not one voice. Several. Layered. Whispering, but not quite in sync. Shilra, Eshel, Nitar. Soft clicking. Zame, zame, zame. One voice rises above the others. Sharp. High-pitched, but human. It's outside, but it doesn't knock. It's waiting to be remembered. Then, sudden silence, followed by 37 seconds of absolute stillness. Then, a low hum, like wind pressing against an empty doorway. Then, nothing. The audio was examined by local authorities, then sent to a private language analyst from a nearby university. The conclusion? Not a known dialect, not a regional code, not anything identifiable. The syllables were described as organic, structured, but untraceable, like something trying to imitate human language without understanding it. SAR Captain Toller. We kept that recorder in evidence for a while, but every time we played it, the file was slightly different. Same length, same pattern, but the words would shift. Just a little. And sometimes, you'd hear your own name. We stopped playing it. Search teams spent 11 days combing the surrounding ridges, riverbanks, and hollows. Thermal drones, bloodhounds, nothing. Eventually, the forest reclaimed the campsite. By November, fresh snow had blanketed the area. The tent collapsed under frost, and the Jeep was towed back to the cousin's house, never used again. 6 months later, a solo backpacker hiking the same area swore she heard 3 voices calling out in the fog at dawn. 1 male, 2 females. whispering her name. Her name was Jordan. She ran. She didn't stop until she reached the ranger station 4 miles away. Her report was never filed. She asked them not to. She just wanted to go home. Leah, Marcus, Jordan. No history of mental illness. No signs of foul play. No ransom notes. No sightings. No remains. Only the gear they left behind. Only the audio. Still analyzed. Still unanswered. And one line scratched faintly into the inside flap of the tent, visible only when angled to light. We're still listening. Not every call for help comes from the living. Not every voice we hear is meant to be understood. Some just echo, long after the people behind them are gone. Coming up next, a boy lost for 11 hours in the Utah Canyonlands returns unhurt, but changed. He says he was with someone. And the only word he remembers from the voice that guided him back was this: mistakes happen. Subscribe to MindFuel. If the forest is quiet, you're already too late. Coastal Oregon, Deschutes National Forest, June 11th, 2019. A retired school principal, 72-year-old William Delmar, vanished while hiking the Tamalich Trail, an easy out-and-back loop near Blue Pool. Well-marked, moderate incline, cell signal in most areas. He hiked it nearly every week. Locals knew him. Rangers waved when he passed the trailhead. He kept a small logbook in his jacket, recording birds, cloud shapes, sometimes trail poems. He signed the register that morning at 8:02 a.m. Weather was clear. Light breeze. No rain forecasted. He was alone. By 11:45 a.m., his car was still in the lot. By 3 p.m., his wife had reported him missing. Search and rescue was dispatched by 5 a.m. SAR Field Officer Nina Calloway. Initial responder report. We arrived shortly after sunset, team of 4. The goal was to clear the first 2 miles of trail before losing too much light. The first half mile was quiet. Then we hit the pine bend where the terrain softens and you lose sight of the creek. That's where we found the boot print. Just one. Perfectly preserved in a dry patch of soil off to the right of the trail, between the roots of a fallen pine. Size matched William's known hiking boots, facing away from the trail, no other marks nearby, no drag, no slip, no doubling back, just that single step. Quote, I saw someone sitting maybe 40 feet off trail, just still, on the ground, upright, but slouched forward like they were watching something. I said hello, no response. I didn't get closer. It didn't feel right, like the woods around them were waiting. That hiker was never able to describe the face. He only said the figure looked folded, like it had been placed in the woods, not arrived there, motionless and absolutely silent. SAR arrived at that exact spot an hour and 20 minutes later. There was no man, but there was something else. SAR Field Officer Calloway. There was an impression in the dirt, human-shaped, deep, like someone had been sitting in the same position for hours, maybe longer. The pine needles were flattened in a wide circle, and there was no debris in the print itself, as if whatever had been sitting there had some kind of weight to it. The strangest part? The air felt charged, like before a lightning storm, but we weren't near a storm system. Then our gear started failing. Over the next 2 hours, 3 satellite phones lost signal. Digital compasses spun wildly. 2 drones refused to lift. One of the SAR team's GPS units rebooted every 30 seconds. Even analog gear, maps and compasses, failed to align with magnetic north. Trees in a 40-foot radius showed subtle bark discoloration, ashen streaks that ran from base to canopy. And in the center, where the depression had been, the pine needles began to turn upward, slowly, as if pulled by static. No body was recovered. William Delmar remains missing. His backpack was found 2 days later, 10 miles downslope on a trail he never used. Inside were granola wrappers, a folded trail map, and his journal. The last entry was short. It read, "Something is watching from the stillness. If I don't move, maybe it won't either." The handwriting in the final sentence was trembling, cramped. The pen stroke ended in a sudden downward slash, cutting through the margin. 2 months later, in early August, a hiker passing the same trail segment reported something unusual. Their phone battery, fully charged, drained to 0 in seconds. Their watch reset itself to 12:00, and their trail cam, set to take burst shots every 10 seconds, malfunctioned. Only one photo was saved. It shows nothing but trees, and in the center, an indentation in the earth, deep, man-shaped, and seated. Sometimes we imagine what it means to vanish, a misstep, a fall, a wrong turn. But what if it doesn't take movement? What if it only takes stillness? What if the forest doesn't want you to run? What if it wants you to sit and become part of it? Up next, Case 5. The boy who spoke back from the canyon. An 11-year-old goes missing for a single afternoon in Utah. He's found unharmed, but repeating phrases in a language he's never heard before. And one of the SAR members swears they saw him standing on a ridge an hour before he was found. 2 miles away. Except, there was one problem. That figure on the ridge? It was already gone before they blinked, and the boy claims, "That wasn't me. That was who brought me back." Subscribe to MindFuel. Because once you hear these stories, you'll realize some are still happening. That's 4 cases, 4 trails walked into, but never out of. 4 searches that started with logic and ended in silence. They called it misadventure, disorientation, predators, exposure. But none of that explains the tents zipped from the inside, the radio voices that mimic the dead, the footprints that only go one direction, the depressions in the soil where no person was ever found. Some say the forest doesn't care, but maybe that's the lie we tell ourselves. Because the truth is worse. What if the forest does care? What if it watches, listens, waits, and every so often, it chooses? You've heard what we've found so far, but the worst, that's still ahead. The next voices aren't lost. They came back, but something came back with them. Continue to part 2. If you still want to know what's out there. But once you hear what happens next, you won't walk into the woods the same way again.